There's something about living in a big empty space where people are few and distant under a great sky and a wind that never seems to rest. There is something about that big country that not only tells an individual how small he is, but steadily tells him who he is.
If I was introducing DJ to someone, I will always say, well, he's a Texan. I think some people resist stereotyping, and I think in a funny way, DJ Stout revels in stereotyping.
I was born in Alpine, Texas, which is a tiny little town out in West Texas, in an area called the Big Bend. My father played baseball there for about 3 years for a semi-pro baseball team. And then he became an officer in the Marine Corps, and I moved every single year of my life. So I was always the new kid on the block. And my dad was also a sports writer. Through his encouragement, every little town that we moved to, I would do a newspaper. Or, when I started school, I would, ask the school if they had a newspaper. And if they didn't, then I would start one. That's when I really learned that a great way to make friends was to put together a newspaper staff, because then you had a bunch of people that were kind of forced to hang around with you. When I graduated from Texas Tech, I wanted to be a magazine art director. I decided to go down to Dallas. And when I was there, I showed my book around and I got a job. And I ended up working there for about 7-8 years.
How did you get here?
And then I got the offer to be the art director of Texas Monthly.
What were you hoping to find, Kingdom Come?
I'd really never designed a magazine before. So the very first issue we did was this great story about this female doctor that was going around killing people through malpractice, basically. We got a model and we photographed the model wearing like a surgeon's mask with a beautiful smile painted on it. When that issue hit the newsstands, right off the bat, it was going to be the best-selling issue in the history of the magazine. So of course I was walking around with a big head, I could barely fit through the door. But the second issue was a story about Van Cliburn, who was, at that time had become kind of a recluse. Right off the bat, we found out that it was going to be the worst-selling issue in the history of Texas Monthly. I had broken the record for the best-selling issue and for the worst-selling issue in my first 2 covers that I ever designed. And what I learned from that was that it didn't really matter how great the art direction was. What really sells is a great story. And that became kind of my rule of thumb.
Texas Monthly is not just any magazine. It's a very serious magazine, one of the last magazines in the business still publishing long-form journalism. I thought he was a dope when I first met him. And of course I was a complete moron myself about that, because it turns out that DJ is one of the smartest people I've ever met when it comes to the integration of words and pictures, when it comes to the integration of design and journalism. I had assumed naively, foolishly, and incorrectly that you told stories through words and you told stories through narrative journalism. The reality is that design is itself a form of journalism, it's storytelling, and there was nobody who made me believe in the power of design as storytelling as DJ did.
You were my friend. Should have listened a little bit closer.
One of the most interesting things about DJ for me as a writer is that I would publish a magazine article in Texas Monthly and DJ would design it. And I would look at it and feel like DJ had not just illustrated this story, he had added to the substance of it. He had been almost a co-creator in my thinking process.
What's so inventive about it is he'd take cowboy boots And rather than photographing them in some conventional way, he'd get William Wegman to get his Weimaraner and put the cowboy boots on the dog. You know, as a photographer, everybody was dying to get an assignment to work for Texas Monthly.
He had this pool of photographers like, you know, Michael O'Brien and Keith Carter and Rufus Lovett and myself. He really helped us along. I think without him, we wouldn't have got the recognition or the space or the freedom to have, to launch our careers. I really think that DJ launched our careers.
Pentagram sort of grows a little bit by accident. We select partners sometimes based on location, sometimes based on specific discipline. DJ did such a wonderful job with Texas Monthly, but he was a magazine art director, which was not an avenue we tended to go into. We looked for people who have, I would say, a more diverse background. But what made DJ plausible was he seemed to be a guy with sort of boundless energy and curiosity, which meant he could really learn anything.
The kinds of projects that I think of when I work with DJ are ones that require not just the sort of technical expertise that it takes to do good design, but it requires a kind of thing that I would just call heart. It requires like passion, soul, like a real connection to the material you're working with. DJ brings that to all of his projects. He's very good at kind of coming in, sort of seeing what the expectation is, figuring out some completely other way to do it, and then coming back to the client with that alternative and presenting it with such genuine enthusiasm and heart that the client often finds that, up till then, inconceivable perhaps solution as not just conceivable, but the obvious and irresistible choice.
DJ's enthusiasm for this profession is pretty boundless, actually. So it really kind of raises the bar for all of us designers to do our best work and to try to keep the ideas as good as his ideas.
When you're working with DJ, the one thing you're going to get is a mind that is on fire. Okay, it's just on.
My design philosophy basically boils down to solve the problem and don't decorate it. What makes graphic design different from fine art is it's not just beautiful, it's a solution to a problem. And sometimes I have to explain to clients that when I say it's a problem, what I really mean is like a math problem. Like, what is it that we're trying to accomplish, and how can we do that through graphic design?
I think when I first started here, I was probably more comfortable with saying, okay, this is good enough, it's better than what they have, it's probably better than what they maybe expected. DJ has really taught us that if it's not ready, you just can't bring it to the client.
When you land on a great idea, it's exhilarating. And sometimes those solutions are very simple, and maybe they're not worthy of putting in a design manual, but if it really works for the client, then that's the thing that keeps me excited about this business.
The biggest thing about this office and DJ and the environment he's built here is that it feels like a family. In most design firms, and my friends that are in design firms can't say that.
He always sort of practices the best design wins, whether it comes from an intern or himself.
He's very good about including his designers and his staff in decisions. Everything from what to charge on projects to should we take this project to including us in client meetings.
I have a policy actually at the office against designers listening to their headphones. I think that my designers originally thought that I was really sort of fuddy-duddy, but we're set up like a newsroom at my office where all the designers are shoulder to shoulder and you can hear everybody's conversation, you can see what they're working on, and it's set up that way on purpose so that they're all working as a team and so that they can all talk to one another.
there's a row of computers and everybody's working at these computers, and he starts at one end and he just goes to everyone's station and sees what they're working on and makes his first comment out of his mouth is positive every time I watched him. And then he said, maybe we could do this and this and this. He's a great collaborator. He definitely has an opinion.
Personally, our first and only branding and naming project perhaps was the naming of our daughter Lucy, which is quite a memorable moment because DJ strung me along actually. Let me think I was fully empowered in naming and branding our child. And Lucy was supposed to be Isabella Jane, as far as I can remember. But DJ surprised me at the hospital when the doctors came in and asked what the baby's name was. A name I'd never heard came out, and that was Lucy Jane Stout. And we named her together, and that's her name today.
You have to sell it. There are a lot of great designers out there in the world, but those great ideas and those great designs can only get so far if you don't know how to sell that idea to a client. You have to present it in a way that a client can understand how great the idea is.
One of my favorite projects of his that he presented at a partners meeting was the covers he had done for a magazine he redesigned called Dairy Magazine. And the covers are beauty shots of portraits of cows. There's a film of him bringing and leading the cows up to the solid color stainless. And the title of his little film was Am I an Art Director or What?
DJ's got the most important thing any artist can have, and that's a sense of wonder. You know, he's excited. Look at this. And it makes you excited about it too.
Austin has this charity fundraising event called I think it's called the March of Cows, and it's where they create these life-size ceramic blank white cows, and they give these to artists all over the city, and they ask them to kind of paint them, decorate them, put their kind of stamp on them, and they'd asked me to do one. I remember hanging up the phone and going, what in the world would I have put on one of those cows? And months go by, and I get an invitation from Pentagram celebrating the unveiling of Bat Cow.
On the day that he wanted to install it, he called me and Stu and a couple other designers to help him out. And I showed up expecting like police barricades, because this is on the bridge, this is a high traffic area. But I pull up and I walk out on the bridge. It's like DJ, his family, and then a couple of old hippie construction workers, and like they didn't have any permission from the police or anything, and they just kind of put up cones and blocked the street to put up this Bat Cow.
Some of the best work that's done in Texas or in the Southwest has a great sense of humor. We're not afraid to try humor, to put our humor on our sleeve, basically. I've designed hundreds of books in my 35 years as a graphic designer. But the first book I ever wrote was about the Alpine Cowboys. And Coconut Field, as you see, is this beautiful baseball field. It's the home of the Alpine Cowboys. The reason I ended up doing this book about this very obscure baseball team in the middle of nowhere is that my father played for the Alpine Cowboys in the 50s. They had like a team photographer like most of that time, and he shot with a large format camera. And they're just beautiful photographs that he took.
All things meaningful kind of connect in one's life, and stewardship has always been a big part of mine. And as Chris and I are, and the crew here are stewards of this land, I think Mr. Herbert was a steward not only of this ranch and this land, but he was also a steward of baseball and those families, the players, and I think DJ is a steward of that story.
I guess you could say that I'm a regionalist. J. Frank Dobie is this really amazing folklorist and writer from Texas, particularly Austin, who really believed in the power of regionalism. He would always say that, nothing really great has ever, come from just trying to be global. The thing I love most about Texas is its character. Anything from cowboy hats and cowboy boots to politicians that act a certain way to oil men. I love taking advantage of that in my design.
There's something about living in a big empty space where people are few and distant under a great sky and a wind that never seems to rest. There is something about that big country that not only tells an individual how small he is, but steadily tells him who he is. I think that's a perfect description of Alpine and Lubbock and West Texas, and I think that the self-awareness that DJ has so strongly is very rooted in the experiences that he had in those places.